The most evil cults in history, dark rituals and brainwashed followers. Throughout history, the world has seen the rise of disturbing cults, groups that promise salvation, enlightenment, or utopia but instead became infamous for dark rituals, psychological manipulation, and terrifying acts of violence. These cults weren't just fringe groups with odd beliefs. They were dangerous, deadly, and twisted in ways that still haunt history today. From mind control and mass suicides to ritualistic killings and doomsday prophecies, these cults went far beyond the bounds of normal society, trapping thousands of people in a nightmare they couldn't escape. Tonight, we dive deep into the most evil cults in history, the sinister organizations that used fear, deception, and violence to control their followers. From the Jonestown Massacre, the cult that drank the poison. No story of evil cults can begin without mentioning the People's Temple, a religious movement led by the charismatic yet deranged Jim Jones. What started as a progressive movement preaching equality turned into one of the most horrifying mass suicides in history. Jones lured thousands of followers to the jungles of Guyana, promising them a utopian society free from racism and oppression. But what they found instead was a nightmare of forced labor, brutal punishments, and paranoia. Jones controlled every aspect of their lives, preaching about an impending apocalypse and punishing those who questioned him. His paranoia grew so intense that he ordered loyal followers to commit suicide drills known as White Nights to test their loyalty. On November 18, 1978, when U.S. officials tried to investigate, Jones commanded his followers to drink cyanide-laced poison. Over 900 people, including children, perished, their bodies sprawled across the jungle floor. It was the largest mass murder-suicide in modern history. Jones, the self-proclaimed savior, didn't drink the poison. He shot himself in the head instead. Jonestown was a deadly reminder of how one man's manipulation could lead to mass destruction. 2. The Manson Family Cult of Death. In the late 1960s, America was caught in a counterculture revolution, and one man took advantage of that more than anyone else: Charles Manson. Manson, a failed musician and psychopath, gathered a group of young, impressionable followers, mostly women, at a desert ranch. He preached that an apocalyptic race war called Helter Skelter was coming, and that his followers were destined to survive and rule the new world. But instead of waiting, Manson decided to ignite the war himself. In August 1969, he sent his followers on a murder spree, brutally killing actress Sharon Tate, who was 8 months pregnant, along with her friends in a horrific blood-soaked massacre. The next night, they murdered Leno and Rosemary LaBianca, writing messages in their victims' blood on the walls. Manson never committed the murders himself. He manipulated his brainwashed followers to do it for him. Even after his arrest, his control never faded. His followers remained loyal, and some even attempted to kill in his name. Manson's twisted cult showed just how dangerous psychological control could be, turning ordinary people into killers. 3. Aum Shinrikyo, the Doomsday Death Cult. Aum Shinrikyo, led by Shoko Asahara, was a Japanese cult that mixed religion, science fiction, and terrorism into a terrifying blend. Asahara, a self-proclaimed guru and savior, convinced thousands of followers that the world was ending and that only he could lead them to salvation. His ultimate goal? To create a global catastrophe. Instead of waiting for the apocalypse, he decided to start it himself. On March 20, 1995, Aum Shinrikyo carried out one of the worst terrorist attacks in Japanese history. They released deadly sarin gas in the Tokyo subway system, killing 13 people and injuring over 1,000. But this wasn't their first crime. Cult built secret laboratories, experimented with biological weapons, and even assassinated political opponents. When authorities finally raided their compound, they found mass stockpiles of weapons, chemical agents, and human remains. Shoko Asahara was eventually executed, but his cult's influence still lingers today. 4. Heaven's Gate, the UFO cult that chose death. Not all cults worship gods, some worship aliens. In the 1990s, Heaven's Gate, led by Marshall Applewhite, convinced followers that the world was about to be destroyed and that the only escape was through a spaceship hidden behind a comet. Applewhite's followers believed that their souls could leave their human bodies and ascend to a higher plane of existence, but there was a catch. In March 1997, as the Hale-Bopp comet passed Earth, 39 members of Heaven's Gate dressed in identical clothing, placed bags over their heads and consumed poison-laced pudding, believing they were ascending to the spaceship. Their bodies were discovered lying neatly in beds, with a peaceful yet eerie expression on their faces. It was one of the strangest, most unsettling mass suicides in modern history, proof of how easily people can be led to destruction through blind faith. 5. The Order of the Solar Temple Ritual Murders and Fire Sacrifices. This cult took ritualistic killings to a horrifying new level. Founded in the 1980s, the Order of the Solar Temple blended New Age beliefs, Christian mysticism, and apocalyptic prophecy. Their leaders, Luke Jurett and Joseph D. Mambro, convinced followers that they were destined to escape Earth and be reborn on a planet orbiting Sirius. But to get there, they had to undergo fire rituals, some of which involved human sacrifices. In 1994, police discovered 53 burned corpses in a series of coordinated suicides and murders across Switzerland and Canada. Many of the victims were drugged, shot, or burned alive. 2 years later, another 16 members died in a similar fire ritual. Investigators later discovered that D. Mambro had been embezzling millions and that the cult was more about money and power than salvation. But for dozens of followers, the realization came too late. Cult mindset, how they control people. You might be wondering, how did intelligent, ordinary people fall for these cults? The answer lies in psychological manipulation. Cults prey on people's fears, loneliness, and need for belonging. They use isolation, cutting members off from family and friends. Fear and intimidation, threatening punishment for disobedience. Brainwashing techniques, repeating propaganda and mind-altering rituals. Charismatic leaders, convincing people they have divine knowledge. Once inside, escaping becomes nearly impossible. Final thoughts, could it happen again? Cults may seem like a thing of the past, but they still exist today, often disguised as self-help movements, extreme religious groups, or secret organizations. The truth is, as long as people seek purpose, guidance, and a sense of belonging, cults will continue to form, and some may be more dangerous than ever before. So, how do we protect ourselves? By learning from history. By questioning, thinking critically, and never surrendering our minds to blind faith. If you found this video eye-opening, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more deep dives into history's darkest secrets. What cult do you think is the most terrifying? Let us know in the comments.